Okay, hi students. We're just going to wait for you guys all to come in and then we'll just give it another minute and then we'll get started because we can slowly see those numbers going up, which is great. So you've got the three of us here and we'll introduce ourselves in just a second. We'll just give it another minute or two. I feel like I should put a proper background on mine, but I'm not going to because it doesn't work for some reason. So yes, I am in the office.
I like the reality of it, Fliss. I think it's good.
I mean, I've got some good pictures, but I think there's something peculiar with my head. It just doesn't work with the background.
I am not in the print studio as much as it, yeah, I'm not. Wish I was.
It looks lovely. It's very nice.
It looks very nice. Yeah.
Me, yeah. Hi, students. It's nice to see you all wherever you are in the world. So just to remind you, the session is being recorded. So that's why we're keeping you guys off camera and silent, because obviously, you know, we don't want to show your face and we don't want to record your voice for privacy. So, okay, all right. I think that is everyone. So, hi everyone. My name's Felicity. I'm from the University for the Creative Arts. And then Jessica, do you want to introduce yourself? Just say hi.
Yeah, thanks. Hello, my name is Jessica and I'm with Arts University Bournemouth.
And Charlotte?
Yeah, I'm Charlotte Davison. I work for Loughborough University. Yeah, thank you for joining us today.
Fabulous. Okay, so I'm going to start the presentation. As we go through, please feel free to take screenshots or whatever you need. We will have a question and answer section at the end. So if you do put your questions in the chat, or if you raise your hand or put them in the Q&A, we'll probably save them till the end, just so everything's covered. It's much easier for us if you put them in the chat or the Q&A rather than raise your hand, because as I said, we don't want to hear, not that we don't want to hear, because of recording, we would rather keep you guys silent just to make sure that you're completely anonymous. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Just bear with me. Okay, and let me get this started. Okay, so everyone can see? We're good? All right, fantastic. Okay, so here you can see your three universities that are going to be joining you today. So just to remind you, it's Loughborough, Arts University Bournemouth, and the University for the Creative Arts. So what are we going to go over today? So we're going to talk about why you would want to study in the UK, how to choose a university, what is architecture, what is the RIBA accreditation, and then we're going to do a little bit about interior architecture and designs and the courses associated in a lot of people's minds with architecture and interior design. We'll give you some general entry requirements. We'll talk about portfolios and show you some examples as well. We'll give you a bit of guidance on careers, alumni, and then how to contact us. Okay, all right, so we're going to introduce ourselves. Charlotte, over to you.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, as I said, I'm Charlotte. I work at Loughborough University, which for those of you who are unfamiliar with Loughborough is a multidiscipline university, so slightly different than the more specialist universities that we've got here today. So we teach arts, design, but also everything across to engineering, the sciences, social sciences as well. We're top 10 in the UK league tables, which is something nice to say, but I do think when you're looking at universities, there's so much more to look at than just league table positions. I actually studied at Loughborough, so I joined Loughborough 10 years ago, pretty much this week, to do my 3-year degree, and I never left when I graduated. I bought my house in Loughborough and I love Loughborough. And what attracted me to Loughborough is our campus, which you can see on the screen. We're one of the biggest university campuses in the UK. We've got a lot of space, lots of stuff going on campus, so all our academic stuff, social activities, accommodation. We have about 17,500 students studying with us at Loughborough. We're very famous for sports, extracurricularly, our social activities as well. So if you want to know any more about Loughborough, drop me a message, find out a little bit more later.
And it's always well known as the most difficult name to say as well. I'm sure you've heard a lot of varieties.
It is definitely the worst word in the English language. Yeah, it's not easy. So the best way to say Loughborough is, imagine it's spelled L-U-F-B-R-A, Loughborough.
Fab. Thank you, Charlotte. Okay, it's me. So I'm the University for the Creative Arts. So we're a specialist art and design university, meaning that everything we do is related to the creative industries or directly to art and design. We are 4 campuses down in the southeast of London. So we're in and around London. We grew as art and design colleges from the 1850s and then have become a university as time has progressed. For architecture, students are based in our Canterbury campus, which is often known as the Canterbury School of Architecture rather than UCA, just to be confusing. We offer around 10 different subjects related to the programs that we're going to talk about today. We're one of the top specialist creative arts and design universities in the UK. We're really proud to be one of the top modern universities in the UK. And our architecture course is consistently ranked very, very high for teaching as well. So last year we were 3rd for teaching quality across our architecture courses in the Times and Sunday Times Good University Guide, which we're really proud of. Okay, and Jessica.
Excellent, thank you. One of the things I love about this session, I was saying to my colleagues earlier, is that we do have a good representation of different types of learning opportunities in the UK. So this is great for the audience to learn about. Arts University Bournemouth is my university, and we are similar to UCA in that we are a specialist creative university. We are located in Bournemouth, which is on the south coast of England. So we're right near the beach, which is one of the perks of coming to study at AUB, is we have a mild climate and just a beautiful location. We have received some accolades and rankings, which are worth mentioning. The personal favorite for me is we were recognized as the UK's top specialist art and design university by the Sunday Times Good University Guide for this year. And the other thing I like to mention is that we are home to the Bournemouth Film School. Now, this may be a strange thing to mention in the session about architecture and design, but what this is just one small example of the nature of the collaborative environment that we create at AUB. Collaboration in the creative arts and the creative industries is so critical. When you go out as a practicing professional, you will always be working with others and bringing your specialism to the table to create something even better. And so architecture will do this with many of our courses, but the Bournemouth Film School is just that sample of bringing 6 or 7 different courses together and really setting the world on fire. They do amazing things, connections with industry. So we're very excited about that. And now I'm going to go into the content of the presentation. Next slide, please. So let's start talking a little bit about where we are. We always assume, for those of us that live in the UK, that everybody has a sense of the geography. But let's be perfectly honest. The further away you are, the more difficult it can be to reconcile. Most people are familiar with where London is. You may also know Edinburgh, perhaps Manchester, but this gives you a bit of a sense of where our universities are located. So Loughborough is kind of right in the middle of England, almost dead center, I'd say. It's a great location for access to all different parts of the UK. And the south, where UCA and AUB are found, is really a very popular destination. It's popular for tourism, it's popular for the quality of life. So you have different options depending on what your priorities are. But you will see Bournemouth right on the south coast, UCA just tucked into the corner there, very close to France, which makes things great. Yes, you can get over for some good French food. So really exploring the different options that are available to you is part of making this decision. So we encourage you to look into what it means to live in the different parts of the UK as a part of your decision. Next slide. All right, so in general, as you're looking at the UK as a destination, we know many of you will be considering different countries and many different continents as a part of your research. So let's just talk a little bit about some of the features of studying at a UK university are. For me, the most important thing is the specialism. At a UK university, when you choose your subject that you will study for your degree, that is basically all you will do for the duration of your degree. And if we compare this to the well-known American style, which is more of a broad-based education where you have the opportunity to dabble in a bunch of different areas, we don't really do that. So as you make your decision, you want to be quite confident that you've chosen the correct discipline for you, because you're going to be thrown headfirst right into that subject. But for those that are passionate about their discipline, it's just amazing to have the depth of study that you will have at a UK university. It really allows you to develop excellent skills that will take you into the professional world of your chosen subject. The fixed length of study, generally speaking, a UK degree, a bachelor's degree, is generally 3 years. Now that's mostly in England. If you're looking at Scotland, you'll be looking at a 4-year model. And then you may also find that some universities will offer something called a foundation year or a foundation diploma. So that's an important question to ask, is what is the length of this degree and am I eligible for this? Does it fit with my personal plans? The small group teaching, and I think we don't talk about this one enough, but what we're going to do is really focus on giving you opportunities to not only interact with your teachers, who we'll call tutors or lecturers here, but also to interact with your fellow students. And it's again part of what I talked about earlier in that collaboration, is this isn't sitting in a room listening to someone talk to you all day, but this is an engaged learning process. And we do that by creating small classes, small study groups, small seminars, small studio spaces. So that's a big part of the UK system. It's also highly independent. This is very much a part of the transition from secondary school to university learning. This will be present almost worldwide, but it's something you should prepare yourself for. When you arrive at a UK university, you are considered to be an adult and you are responsible for your own learning. And sometimes that can be perceived as that people perhaps aren't as connected to you. But what we recommend you do is take advantage of all of the systems and all of the support services that are available, because everyone on our campuses is ready to help you and to make the best learning experience you can. But what we ask is that you initiate a lot of it, that you engage with us. And then really the sky is the limit for the opportunities. It's an incredible student lifestyle, and all of our campuses will offer different opportunities, and same with our communities as well. So that goes back to the idea of doing that research. This subject is really interesting because architecture has a very specific framework that we're going to talk about later in the session. And so you might think, well, what's the difference between the universities? And it will come into what is the student life. Charlotte mentioned the campus environment at Loughborough. That will be slightly different than what we might offer at a smaller university. So looking into the student lifestyle, which is vibrant, but very different at each of our campuses. The opportunity to work while you study. As an international student, your visa generally permits you to have the opportunity to have part-time employment, and there can be built-in work opportunities as a part of your study and your degree. So that's something to investigate as well. And of course, UK degrees are recognized internationally. So we're very excited that the UK has reintroduced the graduate work visa. So you will have the opportunity to stay in work in the UK if you wish. But we know that our degrees transfer and are recognized everywhere. So you could return home if that's what you wish to do. Next slide, please. So we've touched a little bit on some of this, but really ask a lot of these questions. As you're exploring a specific discipline, are you looking at a creative specialist community, or do you want that bigger kind of multidisciplinary comprehensive university experience? How important are rankings and reputation? And really take all of those rankings with a grain of salt. They are useful, but as someone who was not educated in the British system, one of the things that I've come to learn is that unlike other countries, the British spectrum of rankings is much narrower than many other countries. And so the #1 ranked university is #1, and probably for good reason, but the 50th ranked university isn't that much different. That the quality is still very good at all of the British universities. And so rankings can be a factor, but it shouldn't be your whole decision. Location is also very important and something that As a Southern university, I do like to mention, in the interest of clarity, is cost of living changes in different parts of the UK. And if that's something that's important to you, that's a question worth asking. And also, please approach the University of Interest. We have students, student ambassadors, people who are available to give you their perspective on what it's like to be a student at our universities. So ask about those programs and take advantage of them. Next slide, please. Okay, and I may ask some of my colleagues to step in on this because it isn't necessarily my area of expertise, but this is something that's really critical, especially if you're looking specifically at an architecture degree. In the United Kingdom, architecture is a profession with a designation, a license that you are going to work towards. So yes, we all teach it, and that's very important, but we are all bound by the regulations and the guidelines that are laid out by RIBA, which is the Royal Institute of British Architects. So what you need to know is that no matter how we teach it, and if we all do it a little bit differently, those of us that have the RIBA designation must meet certain standards set by this independent organization. So it's broken into 3 parts. The RIBA Part 1 is typically your undergraduate degree taught by one of our universities. And then it also normally includes at least 1 year of relevant work experience. Normally after you've finished your degree, that is your Part 1 of this process. Part 2 is often a master's degree, but they could take a couple of different forms depending on the university. But if a university is calling it the RIBA Part 2, it will meet the requirements set out by that organization as you're working towards your professional designation. And then I think it's supposed to be RIBA Part 3. There's a third part. It's okay, plus easy to do. It is the third part, RIBA Part 3, which is normally done outside of the university environment and once you're already working. So you might be working in a junior position at an architecture firm or an organization working in the industry. And as it goes through, you will complete those steps. So normally I think it's about 2 years, 1 to 2 years after you've completed your degree, that you're then eligible to complete the exams to be considered a licensed architect. I think that's a good overview, but please do investigate the RIBA organization. Next slide, please. Okay, so architecture has a very specific definition. And as I said, we're all working towards these RIBA guidelines. But architecture can also mean a lot of different things. You don't have to go on to become a licensed architect. You can use the architecture education and explore a number of different disciplines. I know of a student who graduated from architecture and went to work in user experience in a gaming company, because of course they're doing a lot of design of physical spaces in the online environment. So many of you will want to be an architect, but know that you're not going to limit yourself. You're going to have so many opportunities to look at how we interact with space, how humans take in the world around them. And so really use this just as a jumping off point for all the different careers that might be out there. And now I'm going to hand things over. I think we're on to Charlotte. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Jess. And that was a really good overview and a lot of things to think about there that I really encourage you to look at. So when you're thinking about universities, architecture, you might have decided you want to do architecture, but that will vary at different universities. So when we're looking at the undergraduate part, so the first start of a degree, there are different ways of studying a RIBA accredited architecture program. You will find when you're looking at degrees, if you start looking at UCAS, for example, as a list of all the universities that offer architecture, you might find that some are taught as Bachelors of Arts. Some universities will teach as a Bachelor of Science. Some will teach a Bachelor of Architecture, which sits somewhere in between the two. So you need to decide what sort of student you are. And this might focus on what your background is, so what you studied at school, but what sort of focus do you want your architecture degree to have? So more of the specific art and design universities will focus more on the creative side, looking at creative aspects of architecture, often very studio-based in how they're taught. And there is often options within those to kind of explore more of the creative aspects of the arts as well. So if you're very arts-based, you might want to look at one of those, which would generally be a Bachelor's of Arts and Honours degree as a Bachelor of Arts or BA. You then have multi-faculty universities like Loughborough. So at Loughborough, we offer a Bachelor of Architecture, and ours sits very much in the middle. We have the studio space, we have the creative design, but we also have our architecture that sits within a School of Civil Engineering. So it sits within a science-based. Loughborough started off as an engineering college, although we've got a fantastic School of Art and Design. Our background originally over 100 years ago is engineering. So naturally, that is reflected in how Loughborough teaches, but Loughborough is very keen to keep this open. We still have studio spaces, as well as the kind of more scientific sides. Some universities across the UK will teach a Bachelor of Science of Architecture and be more on the science side. And what we'll talk a little bit more about entry requirements later. So think about how you want to learn, what sort of style you like. And even amongst creative universities, amongst multi-faculty universities, more sciencey, look at how they teach. What are their teaching methods? What sort of ways would you be taught on your course? So it is very important that although you're looking at an architecture degree, which what you learn overall will be quite similar in the end, how you're taught it will vary massively across the different institutions. When you're looking at postgraduate architecture, you have different ways of doing this as well. So for those of you who are still at school, so looking at potentially doing the full architecture, you have different options of committing yourself to this from the beginning, but mostly you would do the first year part and then you would look at your architecture options afterwards. And if you're looking at doing the postgraduate architecture, we have students who do this directly after their RIBA Part 1, but we also have students who go off, work for a little bit, get some real life experience, and then come back to do their RIBA Part 2, their postgraduate in architecture, after having a break from study, because actually studying for 6 years, 7 years totally to get your qualification is a long time. So there's different ways of doing this as well. But generally the Master of Architecture is 2 years of study at a university. There is also the options of doing 1-year courses, particularly if you don't have a background in the RIBA course. So different options there for you too. And then if you don't want to necessarily look at being a qualified chartered architect, but you want to do something within architecture, there's different options as well. So universities offer courses like interior architecture or interior design, which are all very related, design programs, industrial design, product design, furniture design. Lots of different universities will offer more specific courses, which will often be taught within the School of Architecture. So we'll have a lot of the same modules, but slightly different focuses. We have more of those arts programs. Equally, more of the multidisciplinary universities might offer courses. So for example, Loughborough has architectural engineering. If you wanted to go really far down the other way, you're interested in architecture, but you also like the engineering side as well. So different options within the field of architecture for you there. And if you do want to apply for architecture, hopefully this presentation will make you really excited to do so. Look at how you need to apply at different universities, and this might help you make your decision. If you're studying certain things at school, A-levels, IB, local qualifications, look at the subjects you're taking and look at how that affects the entry requirements of the universities you're looking at. I think, and shout out Fliss and Jess, but I think we just established earlier that at our institutions, we don't have any specific subject requirements for architecture. So you can come in with a creative background, you can come in with a scientific background. At Loughborough, we like a balance, but it doesn't matter what subjects you've taken. However, at some universities, they may require you to have taken an arts subject at school, or they may have required you to take maths, for example, A-level maths at some universities, or science as well. So have a look there. Look what grades are you required? Grades fluctuate, and that will kind of help you decide which programs you want to apply for. But we're looking for students who generally have a strong academic profile, but also are creative as well. So I think Fliss now is going to talk a little bit about the portfolio requirement.
Okay, so portfolios, my favorite subject. Okay, so portfolio requirements do vary from university to university, and again, they vary from country to country. So a portfolio that you might do for an institution in the UK might need to be very different for an institution in the US. So you really need to speak to those institutions, open that communication with them to make sure that you are creating the kind of portfolio that they need. Most institutions as well, people like us three, are usually happy to help you guys just do a little bit more hand holding, even review portfolios sometimes. You know, we're not academics, but we've probably seen millions of portfolios between us. So we certainly know what they're looking for, and we can give you that awareness of what an architecture portfolio should be. All the images that you see on these next few slides are going to be from architecture portfolios going into year one of a RIBA undergraduate programme. So please don't screenshot them and use them as your own, but that's the kind of thing that we are looking for. Okay, so the main thing to remember with portfolios is it is about you. There really is no checklist. No university in the UK is going to tell you that you have to do A, B, C, and D, and you can work through them. It's very much about your personal sense of style and your personal sense of art and creativity. So one of the things that you do have to show is your creative journey. The big difference between a portfolio for year one, direct entry onto an undergraduate program, and a portfolio for a foundation year is the project-based work and the thought process that you put into it. So a foundation portfolio is basically going to be a collection of the pictures and images and creative ideas that you are most proud of. They don't really have to show projects, and they don't really have to show the research behind them. But for an undergraduate portfolio, you must show us that journey. You must show us your original thought, your processes, and your final product. It's important for us to work through that journey with you and see your trial, your error, your failings, your sketchbooks, and then leading on to that final piece. So you need to be bold. Don't be shy, put your best work first and go with that. Try and appeal to us, but at the same time, don't think, okay, I'm going to look at that university and that's what they specialize in, so I've got to do it exactly like that. Every university wants variety in their students. If every student's the same, it gets a bit boring and there's no creative process, but we want more students with more variety so that we can have diverse discussions in the classroom. You want to hold their attention and to show your individual creative process. Now, most portfolios, again, you must check with each individual university. For most portfolios, it's going to be around 16 to 20 pieces of work or pages, and that's going to represent 5 to 6 projects. So you can see on these portfolios here that students aren't just putting a single image on a single page. They're gathering images that are related. They're showing how they've researched around this project. So you can see that they're progressing in their work and they're showing all the examples of what they're doing to progress through that work. You do need to learn how to edit. If you send us a portfolio with 50 pages, the academics are absolutely not going to go through it. They are so busy. They're probably going to look through the first 10, 20 pages at most, and then they're not going to look at the rest. So make sure to put your best work first and edit down those pieces. Keep your presentation simple, especially don't put too much writing. Me personally, I've noticed that IB students tend to be quite guilty of putting a lot of writing on their portfolios. Your work should speak for itself. You can really reduce it down to headlines and a few key sentences and let your work flow, let your sketchbook to your processes to your final piece just flow naturally. The academics can read what you're trying to say through your creative language. We don't need an essay for every image that you put. Consider your presentation. Obviously, we want it to look nice. Art and design, architecture is about creativity. So we do want to see that you can create something pretty or creative, beautiful in that initial instance. Think of it as a piece of music. You know, I keep talking about the journey, but the journey is so important. You've got to show us a beginning, middle, and end. don't be afraid to put your sketchbooks in. We love sketchbooks. They're so crucial. I know they're messy. I know they're rough. I know they're just practices, but that is where you have your initial inspiration, and that is where you lead into greater work. As I said, every course is different and every university is different and every country is going to be different. So if you've got quite a broad range of things, you really do need to do your research and check that you're fulfilling the requirements for those specific courses. It does take a lot of time and energy, but it will be worth it in the end, and you will feel confident with it. Having said all this, don't freak out. Don't work yourself up and don't worry. Especially those students who haven't had a chance to do an art and design or creative subject in their final years of school. We understand it's not an option for everyone. We know that some education systems just do not allow you to study a creative subject past 14, 15, 16 in some instances. So if you don't have a portfolio that comes from an academic background, we will understand that. Just speak to us and we'll give you the guide. We'll give you some examples where we have them, and keep that communication open. Please don't panic about it. And these are just some different ideas that we've got from portfolios recently. So an architecture and design portfolio is generally going to show that you have an understanding of the world around you. A lot of these images showing lines and an understanding of how things work in reality rather than completely abstract images are very, very helpful. I have a lot of students that send us images of sculpture as well that they've done, because if you understand sculpture, you understand form and you can understand the world around you. A lot of photography too. We know that you're not going to have a ridiculously expensive camera, but it is amazing what you can do on a phone. So go out, take photos of the landscape around you. If you're in a city, obviously, you're going to have some incredible skyscrapers and hopefully a mix of old and new. That's always great. But if you're a bit more rural, again, embrace that landscape around you. Show how walls, show how roads work within your photography. And a portfolio should be around 70–80% focused on the course you want to do. Now, within that 70–80%, there is going to be a lot of variety of how you relate to the program yourself. That other 30% is often just, I did this, I'm really proud of it, or I've done this other project for this other class, or I've just done this other project personally. I would like you to see it. A lot of that extra 30% as well includes, I can't remember the word for it, sketching of the human form. So, you know, if you can draw hands, you can draw anything. So we're always happy to see hands. Okay, and a little bit about careers. So what can you do after you graduate? So there's a huge range of things that you go into. Just because you have done a degree with a specific title doesn't mean that you are going to do that job for the rest of your life. I did archaeology at university, haven't done anything with it since. You know, a lot of the time for some students, it's just teaching you those skills that the course specializes in, and it makes you a very employable, interesting individual. You can see here that there is a huge variety of different things that students go into after they graduate from these kinds of programs. One of the things you should also consider as well is that they reckon by about 2050, 2 in every 5 jobs that exist now will not exist then and will have been replaced by something completely different. You know, the robots are coming for your jobs. So it's going to be really innovative what your generation creates. If you think social media, all the massive industry surrounding social media is new in the last 15 years. When I started university in 2004, Facebook was barely a glimmer in someone's eye. You know, I was there when it was cool. So that whole social media industry is new in these last 15 years. And there are going to be more innovations. There's going to be more new companies. There's going to be more new jobs that you guys are going to create. I think especially in like the tech and interfacing side of things as well, which is really exciting. Now, some of our alumni, so we've each got some alumni that we're really proud of here. I'm just going to quickly talk about Henry Chan, who is our student on the right. So he is, sorry, I'm going to have to read this as I go through. So he's part of a team of 7 architects who won the open space design competition. And those winning designs are going to be used to rejuvenate and expand the Hong Kong Science Museum and the Hong Kong Museum of History. If any of you guys have ever been lucky to go there, they're incredible museums, but they're just in like this weird bit of regeneration on the very front of Kowloon. So great museums, but in a weird area. So it's wonderful that our students' designs have been picked to actually be part of that regeneration. I'll pass over to Jess and Charlotte to talk about their alumni.
Yeah, I'll just quickly highlight Joel, who is one of our students from Uganda, who graduated from the Masters of Architecture last year, and he won this award. But more to the point, what I loved about Joel is that he was very much doing his work in the UK, but with a real eye to it being a global project. So being Ugandan, he is very much inspired by a West African architect and looking at moving spaces. And it takes in a lot of work around the environmental impact of architecture, and that it's international and kind of cross-border. So there's lots of information on our website about the work that Joel did through his Masters of Architecture, but just really wanted to show that international flavor and the achievement of one of our students. Charlotte, do you want to touch on some of the students from Loughborough?
Yeah, so Loughborough's architecture program is actually really new. We only have, I think it's 2 graduating cohorts now, so we haven't got a large set of alumni. We have got some, and a lot of them are going on to really successful things. But I think this is something that's really important to look at, is what do students go on to do, but also what do you do whilst you're studying as well. So what I will talk a little bit about is some of the opportunities students have got involved with while they've been a student. So Loughborough works really hard, as I know a lot of universities do, to get real life experience within your degree. So in our 2nd year, students get a real life project with some sort of local community organisation. So last year, the project was with a local primary school to design an outdoor classroom, and students worked in groups with a local architecture company. But it was the students had to come up with the project, research everything from speaking to the primary school children to what they look for, speaking to the teachers, designing an outdoor classroom and outdoor space. And then they got to present their ideas to company, and the winning team, their design has now been built for this primary school. So I think one of those things is, what can you do after your degree, but also what opportunities can you get involved with competitions, opportunities to work with industry whilst you're a student as well.
Fabulous, thank you. Okay, 1 second. All right, so I think I've missed a slide. Oh no, so keep exploring. Keep going to go to as many open days as you can. If you're not based in the UK, we're doing masses of virtual events now and events online. I know you guys are probably so sick of Zoom, so sick of Teams, but it is definitely worth going. Most universities as well have a system that allows you to speak to current students. A lot of the time that's UniBuddy. So yes, they are paid by us, but they are paid to be honest. So they're not going to tell you all the sunshine and rainbows. They will be brutally honest about the university as well. So definitely try and speak to current students. Research those courses thoroughly. I know it's boring reading module summaries, but you've got to do it. Don't be afraid to ask us lots of questions. There is no such thing as a silly question. And if there is, we'll have heard it before. We'll have heard it 10 times before. So don't be afraid to ask anything you want to ask. I've had questions about where can I do my dry cleaning as part of their concerns about where they want to go to university. So yeah, don't worry. Make your decision based on what's right for you and right for your future. I know that can be very difficult with parental pressure and school pressure. You might be looking at you might be being pushed to a very high ranking university, whereas in reality, that university actually isn't going to serve your purposes. You need to think about what is the right thing for you. Don't get trapped in what other people think is right. and fight for yourself. I know it's really hard sometimes when you're that age to sort of fight against the machine, but don't be afraid to stand up for what you think is best. And, you know, we're always happy to speak to parents. Parents are a big decision maker in all these things. And we love speaking to parents. It gets us to speak to someone a bit different sometimes. And we get to explain the really boring things like finances and visas to them. So yeah, always happy to speak to parents. Questions. Okay, so if you guys have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A or the chat. We've already had one about IB points. So I can say generally for all universities, it's going to be different. I know that's really unhelpful. You're going to have to check each institution for their specific IB requirements. We ask for 29 in the IB. Jess, Charlotte?
Yeah, we're normally looking at 30, so very, very similar.
Yeah, we look for 35, so a little bit higher.
And then just to reiterate, there's no specific subject requirements within any of our high school qualifications. So no specific A-levels, no specific IBs, French bac, whatever you're doing. Then we've had a question about IELTS as well. So if you're doing an IB, most universities are going to find some way to waive an IELTS requirements. If you're doing different qualifications for high school, speak to us, because every university, we kind of all accept the same thing, but it's always worth just double checking. Most institutions have really thorough English language information on their website, but definitely have that conversation with us. If you're coming into a foundation, it can be a little bit different for English. Some institutions are going to require you to have a UKVI CELT, which is the secure English language test. Some won't, because of the way that their visas might work. So again, I know I'm sorry to repeat myself, but ask the university, speak to them about your options. Jess, you had a question that you wanted to go for?
Yeah, I saw that there was a question from a student asking about I think there's a lot of IB students in the audience, so we'll touch on this, but we know that not all of you are in the International Baccalaureate. But they're asking about whether or not having IB can change the university credits. And speaking as a North American, this question comes from a lot of, especially American colleges, that will grant first-year standing for students who've completed IB coursework. And so a student who's done IB may be eligible to go directly into second year of their degree, or perhaps just reduce the number of courses they have to take. Now, the British model is so different that generally speaking, this just won't happen. So the easy answer is no, it won't. You're not going to receive credit for your IB subjects towards a UK university degree. The first reason being is generally the UK education system is a 13-year system. And students completing the IB might be in a 12, possibly a 13-year system. But what you're looking at is IB is equivalent to what we would expect British students to present for admission to our degree courses. So you're not exceeding the standard that we expect, you're meeting it. But the other issue is, and this is something that will come as a part of your research, is we don't really offer classes at UK universities. We do something that's usually called a module, perhaps a unit, and they are longer and more in-depth. So you might be doing 2 modules at a time instead of at a North American university or college where you're doing 5 courses per term. So it's very difficult for us to match up what you would have covered in an IB course with what we are teaching on the first year of our degree courses. But I would say, generally speaking, the International Baccalaureate is well respected as an admission qualification for British universities. Would you agree with that? Is that fair?
It's a great qualification. It's tough. I couldn't have done the IB.
Yeah, but unfortunately, you're not going to get quote unquote credit at a UK university, unfortunately. So that would be the answer to that.
If you don't mind me just adding onto that as well, I mean, you get credit in a US institution. A US institution is generally, your undergraduate course is going to be 4 years. In the UK, it's 3 years because of that different level of high school qualification. So in the first year of a US uni is the same academic level internationally as your IB. That's why you get credit. The first year of a UK uni is that next step above your IB. So that's why you can't get credit for it. I don't know if that helps. I know it's a bit confusing, but yeah, please do speak to us if you're a bit lost with it. Okay. And then just to remind you guys, most universities aren't going to have subject specific requirements. Some will. You have to check. I know it's an unhelpful answer. You have to check each university. But you know, for us, for interior design, we don't even specifically ask for art and design because so many students just won't have the option to do it. We'll look at your grades. Of course, every university wants to look at your grades or your UCAS points, but portfolio for most courses is the key thing. Your portfolio is absolutely going to be the key thing. And it's not going to have to come from your academic subjects. It doesn't have to come from A-level art, but your portfolio is going to be not more important than your grades, but it's certainly going to be a real deciding factor for us.
Can I just add on there, guys, do your institutions interview for architecture?
If we're unsure of the portfolio, we will interview the students, but generally not as a rule.
Okay, how about you, Jess?
We don't, and I was just going to put in a bit of a plug for the personal statement. So especially in the COVID era, we aren't doing any interviews, where historically we interviewed people who were located in the UK and just did kind of digital reviews for students living outside the UK. So that isn't international or British, that's where you were living. So just that little plug for the personal statement, because we didn't really talk about it. And I think it's underestimated how important it is. So even if there's an interview, the personal statement is your opportunity to demonstrate what you know about this field and why you think you would be a good candidate. So it's a little like an intro interview or that opportunity to kind of sell yourself. And so for our decision, while we don't interview, the personal statement can really carry a lot of sway. If the technical skills aren't quite there yet, our course teams across the board will say, we can teach them the technical side, we can teach them that basic stuff, but we can't teach them the ideas and the inspiration. And so your opportunity to convey that might be in an interview, or it might be in that personal statement.
Yeah, so at Loughborough, we interview all of our applicants for architecture design. So I think it's really important to say that an interview isn't meant to be scary. An interview is two ways as well. It's your chance to find out more about the university, ask the academics the questions you want to know, find out if that's the right program for you. You know, we want to see a student that actually wants to go to the institution that's right for them. Interviews aren't designed to trip you up. They're not designed, but they're designed for us to find out a little bit more about you and vice versa. So normally, if you've got a good portfolio, the basis of an interview would be around talking about your portfolio, why you've done things. And I think to build on what the others have said about portfolios, often we're looking at creativity. And one of our architecture portfolios that is used as an example, which our architecture team has shown me recently, is quite heavy on creative writing. And you might think, what on earth has creative writing got to do with architecture? But we are looking for students who are creative. We're looking for students who can think outside the box, do things differently. So this creative writing, there was a piece of poetry and there was a short story, and it was creative and it was really well done, and it showed that that student can think outside the box. So, and I think to build on that as well, students often, if they've not studied architecture before, get really kind of caught up in trying to know about architecture to put in their portfolio. We're not expecting you to be an architect because we're going to teach you architecture. We're expecting to have someone who can come and learn about architecture.
Okay, and we're just going to race through these questions. We're probably not going to get to all of them, but we will have our contact details on the last one. So yes, we'll take portfolios from your IB and your GCSE, but you need to edit them down to make sure that they are university suitable. And often GCSE needs to be surpassed by IB or A-level subjects. Jess, you were going to answer something about personal statements?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting one. And again, I'm making an assumption, but the personal statement, that's a really interesting thing for me. If you're applying to, again, American colleges, What you submitted as a personal statement or a personal essay looks very different than what you will submit to a UK university on your personal statement. So this question specifically asked about extracurricular. You should mention your extracurricular activity in your personal statement for UK universities as it is relevant to the course you want to study. Where in an American college essay, you might specifically focus on the life experience, but you never really relate it to what you're going to study. It's more about encapsulating you as an individual. But the UK very much wants you to focus everything on the course you're applying to and why you will be a good candidate. But extracurriculars can absolutely factor in there. You might be the captain of your football team and you've developed leadership skills and organizational, and that's relevant to studying a professional degree. But you have to make that connection. Just saying I'm the captain of my football team isn't going to be enough. So really think about everything and why does this make me a good candidate for this course?
Just lastly, yes, if you do get a big award, you put it in your personal statement and it's relevant to your application, there is a good chance that we will ask for evidence of it. So try and be truthful in your personal statement. Okay, all right, so these are our contact details. You guys are going to get recordings of all these. We're not going to bombard you with recordings, but you will get all our personal information as follow-up. Talk to us, communicate with us. We are really, really happy to hear from you. So keep that communication going. And then just in terms of, sorry, the sessions that we're doing tomorrow, sorry, there are more sessions today, which we didn't put on. But for sessions that we're doing tomorrow, this is everything going on. You obviously will need to follow those Zoom links. You should have all had an email about it, a couple of emails from me or from International Studies at UCA. Feel free to contact me if you have any trouble accessing anything or if you have any questions about like the more technical side of things. I can get you guys onto the system. But yeah, sorry to race off. We've got really busy days today. Oh, go on.
Sorry, can you just pop back to the contact slide? Somebody has asked just to have another look at it. Yeah, thanks. Can take a picture of it or something. Also, we'll send out all the contact details as well. Yeah.
Fabulous. Okay, all right. Thank you, students. I hope that was really informative. We are all desperate to get traveling as soon as possible. So depending on countries allowing us in or not, I know the UK has got a bit of a reputation as Plague Island at the moment, but I promise it's fine. It's like having a cold. We hopefully will get out to you guys as soon as possible. Sorry, it's like a cold if you're double vaccinated, which we generally all are now. We will be to your schools as soon as possible. We'll be in your country as soon as possible. Come and speak to us. Speak to as many universities as you can. And yeah, just keep that communication going. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Bye. Bye.